The latest update from Gran Turismo 7 released maybe the 4 most useless cars we've ever had, and it's rather quite unfortunate considering that this time around we don't get the typical SUV this month. And I'm going to talk about all of them in more detail, but before I do, I'm trying to get this channel to 70,000 subscribers, so if you want to stay up to date with everything Gran Turismo and motorsport gaming related, then feel free to leave a like, subscribe and turn your notifications on. Anyway, let's get straight to it then. So let's kick things off with the biggest culprit of the update, the Afeela 1 2026. Of course, in early 2024 we received the concept version, and now we're receiving the full production version. Of course, this is a Sony car, so it is expected, but this is pretty much Polyphony falling on old habits with a full duplicate car. It's a massive shame, as really the only noticeable change here is a bit of active aero. Now, of course, with the car moving from a concept car to a production car, we do have a few tuning options this time around, but not many. Of course, this is still an electric vehicle, meaning that it's incredibly limited in the tuning shop. As for body options and wheel options, well, there's no wide body option, and of course no engine swap option here. As for the wheels, well, again, these are customizable. It's really no different from what we saw with the concept, which did also feature this as a customization option, but we do have a few aero options as well, with a Type A front bumper and of course rear wing options this time around, as well as of course the active aero on the back. I guess really the only plus side of the Afeela 1 is the fact that, just like the prototype, it remains completely free of charge to the player, so you don't have to go ahead and spend credits on this. Now, one thing that I did notice with the Afeela 1 and the prototype is that the production variant we're seeing here does have the lesser of the 2 PP ratings. However, I will say that in terms of the actual performance when you're driving it, the Afeela 1 feels much better by a pretty huge margin. For me, the prototype was one of the worst driving cars in the entirety of Gran Turismo 7, and the Afeela 1 definitely does improve on that. However, that's still not saying much. Again, the Afeela prototype was so bad to drive, and the Afeela 1 really isn't that much better. Whilst it's definitely a step up in terms of the prototype, overall it's still not a great car to actually go around and drive. In terms of the changes, of course, I think a lot of it is due to the fact that we do have that rear wing, which now goes up and down in terms of your speed, of course giving you just like a slight bit more downforce. It's still a very heavy, chunky vehicle, takes an absolute eternity to get slowed down into the corners, and really isn't a vehicle that you want to be driving around and racing around on tracks. But you know, it's here, it was expected. Of course, the Sony Honda collaboration for this one, so we knew the production version would eventually come. It's just a shame it came in this update with even more disappointing vehicles alongside it. So even with the price tag of entirely free, is it worth sending this car to your collection? I would say probably not, unless you just want to go ahead and collect it. Again, in terms of the on-track performance, it's not great. Yes, it's better than the prototype. Yes, it's faster in terms of its lap time when compared, but again, the standard there that was being set was one of the worst in Gran Turismo 7, and honestly the Afeela 1 production version doesn't do that much more than of course what the prototype did. So for me, this is an absolute stinker. Speaking of stinkers, next up is the Corvette CX. Now, honestly, I'm incredibly salty about this one, because on paper, if there was any Vision Gran Turismo car that really could have changed my mind about them, the CX was certainly one of them. 2,000 brake horsepower, a fan downforce system. On paper, this looked absolutely incredible. In reality, it's an electric vehicle with too much horsepower, the wrong tyre compound, and unfortunately, it makes this one of the worst Vision Gran Turismo cars and most disappointing cars that's ever been added to Gran Turismo 7. The potential was really here. With a collaboration between Polyphony and of course the iconic Corvette brand, this could have been amazing. Of course, as for the customization options, there's really nothing here. This being an electric vehicle and an EV means it's even more limited than you typically see with the Vision Gran Turismo cars. The only real thing you can do is a few tyre changes, and that's your lot. Even when you head over to GT Auto, there's no wide body option, of course no engine swap option with this being an electric vehicle once again, and of course the only terms of customization we are supposed to get is wheel options, which are highlighted for no apparent reason considering none of the wheels in game seem to fit this car. I went through my entire collection and there was just none. There's no other options either. So the single biggest issue that I'm seeing here with the Corvette CX is what should have been a massive plus point for it, and that is the 2000 brake horsepower. Again, we are putting all of that down in an electric vehicle, and again those feel completely disconnected in Gran Turismo 7. There's no true feeling of where you're at with the road, there's no true feeling of your braking points or how fast you're accelerating. It's again just on or off, that's at least how it feels, and unfortunately 2000 brake horsepower in a car like this just feels too much. Again, it also feels like it's on the completely wrong compound of tyre by default. It's on sports softs. I get this is a road car, but with that much power it's almost useless. It's going to completely try and throw you into the barrier at every single corner, regardless of the claimed massive amount of fan downforce that this thing gets. And again, that's another issue. The only true time you actually feel that downforce kicking in is when you're off of the throttle and the car will start to rotate itself. Apart from that, as soon as you put the power back on, it's going to then try and launch you into the barrier. It just feels completely disconnected, and I really don't like the driving experience we've got here. It's the exact same issue that the Porsche Mission X suffered from. A lot of horsepower, electric vehicle, road tyres, it just doesn't work. And unfortunately, even when you put it on the softest compound in the game, racing softs, this does not solve the issue. Yes, it feels a little bit slightly better, but you'll still find that you put the power down and then can't turn unless you lift off the throttle, because this thing is constantly spinning up its wheels and ready to launch you into the barrier and then into oblivion. It's massively unfortunate because I think as far as Vision Gran Turismo cars go, this is one of the more grounded, better looking in terms of futuristic kind of vehicle that we've seen, period. I think it looks fantastic, but unfortunately it's entirely useless. Oh boy then, here we go. The Corvette CXR, what had the potential to be one of the coolest cars added to Gran Turismo 7 this year, has fallen completely flat on its face. Of course, this is the racing variant of the CX, and unfortunately it follows the same trend of the CX of being a complete disappointment. It was kind of, I guess, advertised by Polyphony as being an endurance racer. It absolutely is not. Number one, there is no grouping on this car. It's then far too powerful, even fully down-tuned, cannot enter even a 900 pp event. It's a massive shame. In fact, it's almost entirely useless in where it can actually be used to its full potential. First of all though, let's quickly touch on the upgrades from, of course, the tuning shop. There's really not much here that you can change. There's a few tyre options, but that's basically it. And of course, from GT Auto, this being a racing car, there's really nothing you can actually change here. Again, that was to be expected. But what makes this car so bad then? Of course, as mentioned, I think a lot of people, myself included, expected this to be a group vehicle, which meant that it of course would probably run in group 1 with the performance mentioned. Unfortunately, it doesn't have that added to it, which means this is massively unrestricted in terms of its performance, which makes it incredibly quick, but unfortunately it cannot then be down-tuned to actually enter any event, meaning that this car is almost entirely useless in where it can be used. And even if you can get it into a custom race with tyres and fuel, it has a battery in the car that runs out inside of a few laps, meaning that it loses a lot of that performance and then just completely drops away. Again, this was kind of targeted as being an endurance race car, and it really just isn't that. However, I will admit, when I took it into time trial and I really got the throttle down and I started gelling with the handling of the car and how aggressive and over the top it is, I genuinely really enjoyed my time with it. Unfortunately, again, just like the CX, it is entirely limited though, and it is such a shame because there was so much potential with this one. It sounds incredible, it looks really aggressive and actually very, very nice for a Vision Gran Turismo car, but unfortunately, again, just its usefulness inside of GT7 will probably make this one fade into obscurity very, very quickly. It's a huge, massive amount of missed potential here by Polyphony, and I just wish they did just that slight bit better with adding this car and incorporating it into Gran Turismo 7. However, let's finish off on a more positive note. The Renault Aventime, of course, added to Gran Turismo 7 with that latest update, and of course is a bit of a cult classic. It sold absolutely terribly in the real world, and here we get the 2002 V6 model. Overall, this is easily the best addition with this update. It features a ton of customization options, a day one engine swap, and overall can be transformed into an entirely different beast. This is the kind of car that I absolutely welcome to Gran Turismo 7 with open arms for just how much you can completely overhaul it. If we look at the customization options here, it does feature a wide body option for 25,000 credits. Once again, not breaking the bank. Of course, if we also look at the engine swap, this is a group 3 engine swap, which means it has race fuel potential, meaning that you can transform this into an endurance race car. On the other hand, we do have the customization options. There's a ton of different wheel options here. Of course, there's not all of them. There is kind of, a few ones that are completely locked away for this specific vehicle, but there's plenty you can do in terms of your wheel options. You can make them massive, smaller, wide. You can pretty much do everything with a lot of different types of wheels. Again, in terms of the aero options, we do have a throwback to the Top Gear episode with that huge front splitter. Of course, we do have side options as well as a massive rear diffuser for the back, and of course that huge rear wing option. Again, it does feel like a throwback to, of course, that Top Gear episode where they put that massive F1 rear spoiler on the back of the Aventime, which is really nice to see Polyphony, go to that attention to detail with this car. You can also roll cage it if you do want to. Of course, this goes a long way to turning it into a full-blown race people carrier. It was honestly very, very impressive. Overall, this is a great addition to the game. Of course, in the standard trim, it's very heavy, very bulky, and definitely not that amazing, but once you've got that engine swap in there, got a good tune on this thing, it really is a fantastic car to drive. You can have a lot of fun, and honestly, it just looks absolutely ridiculous. For me, this is one of the better additions that we've had in recent times, just for how in depth it goes, and of course the fact that you can completely transform it. Easily the best car of the update, considering the other 3 vehicles that are here are honestly some of the most useless and most disappointing cars I've seen in a very, very long time. So really, the Renault Aventime sits as the only proper saviour from this update. And there we go. That is my opinion on the 4 vehicles that was added with 1.62. I do apologise that this is pretty much going to be 2 weeks delayed by the time it actually goes up. Again, I had a whole bunch on over this last couple of weeks, which really put a lot of these videos behind, but I still wanted to be able to come across and give you my opinion on these vehicles. I feel like in terms of the update, it had the potential to be much better than it was. This CX could have been incredible. The CXR was absolutely almost certainly going to be amazing and very, very popular with a lot of players, considering the fact it was advertised as an endurance racer. And the Aventime, well, again, it's a bit of a cult classic. The only one on the surface that I thought would have been a disappointment was the Afila 1, and unfortunately that is the case, but it's also the case for both of the Corvettes, leaving the Renault Aventime as the only proper interesting car here. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. A huge thank you to all of my channel members on the screen now. Thank you for your continued support. Again, apologies for being absent the last few weeks, but again, we are back to making videos. Again, huge thank you to all of you guys watching at home. I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.